get to building, you'll get very successful in terms of so we try to work with the applicant to
Hello, my name is David Erickson. I am testing the audio in the Monterey City Chambers. This is an audio test. I am testing to see that the audio is going out on our YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience. The scheduled start time is 4 p.m. Thank you.
no.
2023 meeting of the Architectural Review Committee. The committee members we have present today are myself, Chair Patrick Tregenza, Chaim Ostavar, Shelley Schmidt, new member, committee member Eric Palmer. Thanks for coming, Eric, and serving. And we'd like to thank Zoe Carter for her service with the committee, or the committee that she's been on at least 5 or 6 years, I think. So thank her for that. Erica, if you'd like to announce the staff that are present.
Sure. We have our planning manager, Levi Hill, associate planner, Matthew Buggart, myself, recording secretary, Barrera, and administrative assistant, Spencer Argenbright.
Thank you. And can you explain to any members of the public how they can participate via Zoom?
Members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you with no lag time. This meeting is also streamed live on youtube.com/City of Monterey with a 10-second delay, and Comcast channel 25 up to a 90-second delay. If you would like to provide public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone, making sure to join in to accommodate delays. To join the Zoom meeting from your computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. Since the meeting has started, you'll find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864 toll free. Then enter the webinar ID. The ARC webinar ID is 161-914-9563. If prompted for a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions for Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To provide public comment via Zoom, please raise your hand, use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. Please turn off TV or computer speakers or go to another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised. There is a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting. Please stay within that limit. Thank you.
Really well done. I'd like to open the consent agenda. Would any member of the public or commission committee like to discuss any the consented items that are on it? I think there's basically 2 minutes that need to be approved. One of them is just an adjourned minute. So
There are 2 attendees online, but there are no hands
no
raised.
hands raised. Okay, so I would like to hear a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That consent agenda is approved. I'd like to open up the floor for any public comments for items that are not on today's agenda.
There are no hands raised online.
Thank you, Erica. Then we're going to go to our first item. Item number 4, consider 2030 North Fremont Street sign permit application SI 23-12-1028 for 1 wall sign with internal illumination and 1 vehicle oriented freestanding sign. Matthew, you have a presentation?
Yes. I will share my screen. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Buggart, and I'm an associate planner with the City of Monterey's Planning Division. Today, we're here to talk about 2030 North Fremont Avenue, sign permit application SI 23-0128 for illuminated for a illuminated wall sign and a vehicle-oriented sign. The recommendation from city staff is that the ARC adopt the resolution to approve the sign permit application with conditions of approval. The site is located in the eastern side of the city, where you get off the freeway going north onto North Fremont Avenue. The general plan designation is commercial and the zoning is VAF, our Visitor Accommodation Facility zoning district. Signage within these zones requires approval through architectural review. The proposal is for one internally illuminated sign on the building and one addition to an existing vehicle-oriented sign that's closer to the street. The first sign that would be mounted onto the building is 25 square feet in dimensions. It would have push-through illuminated letters and logo. The red portion of the sign would not be illuminated. And there's an existing electricity plug-in from a previous sign that was located here that was also internally illuminated. At night, the letters and logo would light up and the rest of the sign would be dark. This is the previous illuminated sign that was here associated with O Sushi. The second sign is on this existing vehicle-oriented sign, pole sign along North Fremont. The existing sign is approximately 75 square feet. It's a rather large sign. And as some additional background, along North Fremont Street, within the North Fremont specific plan, there are a few policies associated with pole signs. And I only bring this up for awareness. It's within the boundaries of the specific plan, but it does not have the zoning designation of PCNF. So technically it falls under the VAF standards, which defer to the sign guidelines for the whole city. This is just in terms of consistency with the rest of the zone. The visible pole should be eliminated. The height of the sign should be reduced to a maximum of 8 feet, and a solid base or pedestal should be integrated into the area beneath the sign. Since this is not with that designation, we did not strongly require or request them to change the sign. And for any new sign, we usually like to encourage these on, but since it would be added to an existing pole sign, our recommendations are unique. So this is the proposed sign. It would be underneath the Travelodge sign. The rest of the property is the hotel by Wyndham Travelodge. And it's had this restaurant space in there for some time. The addition would be 24 square feet for a total signage square footage of 99 square feet just on this one sign. Here's a slight mock-up of what it might look like. The cafe sign to the left, the vehicle-oriented sign to the right. And of all the signs on the property, there is one more little one over here associated with the entrance to the hotel. Findings required for approval from ARC is that the proposal achieves the purposes and objectives of the sign ordinance. And staff found that it did. It helps to identify the business and for number 2, it needs to be consistent with the guidelines, or ARC determines that the proposal would better achieve the purposes and objectives than strict application of the guidelines. There are inconsistencies for this project, specifically with the vehicle-oriented sign. The 8-foot maximum and the solid width base there would be necessary. However, it's an existing sign and it would be added to the existing sign. And finally, the proposal needs to be consistent with the general plan. They are going through this process to receive ARC approval today, which is why it's before you today. A little bit more on that second item. The vehicle-oriented sign would be 99 square feet. The maximum allowed for vehicle-oriented signage is 50 square feet.
The frontage of the building is 350 feet. Just the property frontage fronting North Fremont Street is 472 linear feet. It's a rather large property, and having a larger sign seemed relatively appropriate. The vehicle-oriented signage guideline notes a full-width solid base. The sign would be mounted on the existing pole structure. There is a condition that is recommended by staff for the vehicle-oriented sign, and that's to reduce the size of it. The sign seemed overly large for what would be proposed at the site, and with the reduction, the sign would not obscure scenic qualities. The total would still exceed the vehicle-oriented guidelines. The sign size complements the size of the building and the linear frontage. It also identifies the site's secondary business in addition to the hotel. With that, staff's recommendation is that ARC adopt the resolution to approve the sign permit with the condition of approval to reduce the sign size of the vehicle-oriented sign by to 1/3 of the proposed sign size, which would be 8 square feet. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm not sure if the applicant is online. We had discussed at one point here, but otherwise, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions for Matthew?
Matt, I might have missed it. The freestanding sign, is that illuminated or not going to be?
It
illuminated?
is not illuminated. Let me be clear. There are two small, there's upward lighting on it, but the sign itself is not internally illuminated or anything like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yes. So I see that this is zoned a visitor accommodation facility. You'd mentioned another acronym that I'm not aware of, PCNF.
Apologies. Yes, PCNF is Planned Community North Fremont. For those properties along the strip of North Fremont that are within the North Fremont specific plan, they have the designation of PCNF, just calling out that it is subject specifically to the specific plan. It's within the overall planning area. It's just not designated as that.
Any other questions? No. Erica, is the applicant online? Would they like to make a presentation?
I don't see the applicant online.
Okay. I don't see anybody in the audience. Is there anybody with their hands raised online?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, let's open it up for committee comments.
I have.
Go ahead.
So, I did have some issues regarding the size of the freestanding sign or even the need for a freestanding sign. I live in the area, so I do pass that quite a bit, and I just, as you're driving by, it's right there with the sign. So you never miss the Sushi sign. It was right there. So I didn't really see the need for the freestanding sign. And then when the proposed size just seemed so big, but with the condition of approval that staff has suggested or is recommending, I feel a little bit better about the freestanding sign. But my initial response was, why do we need that freestanding sign? Which is fairly close to the wall sign. It's not like it's away from where the proposed replacement sign on the building is. So I didn't kind of get the need for that when it's so close in proximity to the sign for the business. So those were my concerns. But with the conditions of approval and the smaller size, I'm feel a little bit better about it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the mock-ups. I think it's helpful for board members to make decisions in the public. It's my first meeting, so this is a really great report. I think large signs seem consistent with the business district, not so much the rest of the city, maybe except for Moonris. And I like the idea of a reduced sign that signifies that secondary business. And so I supported it as is. I was curious about are there, when other business, for future plans for large signs in this district and others, are large signs typically discouraged once businesses change hands? Because that, I agree that Travelodge sign is very large.
Yes, and I have a twofold comment to make on that. One, they originally just submitted an application for the wall sign, and then they wanted to also show the sign on the pole sign, which then pushed them a few hearings. And regardless, it was a specific desire to have that, which is why there's another reason that they're here before you today. As for the size of new signs, the citywide sign guidelines, the maximum for it being 50 square feet, if it falls 50 square feet or below, can be approved administratively. Not at VAF properties, any signage comes to ARC for VAF. And in terms of the addition to an already large sign, staff somewhat struggled with that because it's already an overly large sign, and any addition was going to be further non-compliance with the sign, as to the amount, and the addition, tightening it up to something that could still reach between the poles and have the Del Monte Cafe was a balance that wanted to be run by ARC.
And I'll just add to that, to your second question. Whenever we do have non-conforming signage that does change hands, and the new signage is proposed, it is staff's approach to try to bring those signs into conformance at that point.
So I have a question then. I like, let's say this Travelodge, it changed hands and became a Marriott or whatever. And they said, okay, we want to stick with the two poles. We want to have the exact same sign. We're just gonna put Marriott on it. Would staff in that case say, we know, no, because now we need you guys to comply with the sign codes?
It would come before ARC again.
Okay. Because I'm a little concerned about adding to a non-compliant sign and giving it more precedence. It's like, oh, well, you guys okayed it, you don't like the sign, but you let these people put their sign on top of that sign. Is that sending a bad message, or the wrong message? Because we really would like that sign to conform eventually with the base and the size and so forth. So I'm wondering if just kind of rubber stamping this other sign on it because that other sign is already existing is sending a tacit approval to the sign that's there. Something to think about.
Yeah, this is interesting. You're all going through the same thought process I did. I think kind of like, do we need this? These are already big. What are the future visions? I guess are some of my other sort of comments or questions. If we have future visions or plans for this district, are we moving towards that future vision, or are we taking a step back to something that we don't particularly like? These types of higher speed, really rather non-pedestrian friendly locations for buildings and structures are really pretty difficult in general. I usually remember what I see there, go to Street View, and I am seeing quite a few other signs that are quite large and non-compliant, not attached to bases and things like that too. So that's also, of course, a consideration. Are we irresponsibly holding them back to compete with their neighbors? I don't think we would be if we made that choice, and especially if we were to make it clear what we think this future plan is and that we're trying to come into compliance with that future vision, because otherwise you're never going to get there if you're constantly just addressing things as they are. So I'm conflicted because at the same time, obviously there's these existing conditions. It did get better. That was also my thought too. It was like, oh, I guess making it smaller would help. And it's added complexity with, you said the other overlapping districts or something like that. So Preferably, I would like if signs just didn't really have to come in front of this committee if the regulations and standards were so clearly clear and communicated. And it was easier for everybody to just be like, no, this is the complied standard. That would be fantastic. I think for everybody, for applicants, everything, if it was just really clearly communicated. But with that in light, I'm basically waffling between a smaller sign or no
Or no sign?
additional sign.
Matt, is it possible to put the slide back on that had the freestanding sign in relation? I think there was one that kind of showed the proposed illuminated sign with the freestanding sign kind of in the
Yeah,
same shot.
right, that's it right there.
So see how close that is to the
Yeah,
illuminated sign? I just don't see the,
and Oh
Mine-
Sushi didn't have a sign there, right?
yeah, Osushi did not have, they just had the,
Oh, Sushi
Well-
did not have a sign there, and the reason that they are coming to you is partially because they know that the sign is not in compliance with the standards.
I think on the building, the only travel lodge sign is that small one that's above the entrance to the hotel, correct? That one made sense more to me than having the freestanding sign right there at the driveway entrance, virtually almost at a 90-degree angle to the illuminated sign. That was my issues. I just didn't see the need to have that freestanding sign when the big illuminated sign is right there. It's not like this is at the other driveway where you might not see
I guess
the
that,
new sign. Am I
Well, that-
making
well,
myself clear?
yeah, well, that was leading to my, I guess, next question or comment. Are there other confusing entrances that would really improve safety, et cetera, for people not getting confused where they should enter and find this restaurant?
Yeah, there are 2 driveway entrances to the site. Yeah. Yeah. Nope. There's more to that.
Let's watch the World Cup.
So there is an entrance here, which I just went there today and I don't remember if it's open or not.
That's an
Uh,
excellent.
An exit, yeah,
It's
not
the
even-
exit and there's one entrance here.
Oh.
When you're
So no,
coming down the road, you can see the travel up be here. And then Oh Sushi comes into,
People use that. I don't remember that chain being up there, but on the second entrance. But I do know this is
you can still
kind
get
of the
there
main. Yeah.
anyway too, but yeah, that would be the only other reason I see typically for a sign like that is make sure it's clear. Here's where you enter. Because you are moving at slightly faster speeds here, unfortunately, but
If the proposed sign were at the other entrance where it's not near the restaurant, I kind of
I don't believe that it's an entrance over here.
No,
There's one primary entrance.
just don't really.
but if you're going this direction, which you would be, because you almost
Oh,
have to,
Okay,
then you're not, it's blocked.
But
You-
are
you-
you even gonna see it with that bush right there?
Yeah, I think you would. I mean, just
Or just-
seeing the mock-up,
they'll
yeah,
probably
it's
cut
gonna be
the-
right
yeah,
there.
cut the
yeah.
bush.
I guess you would see the sign though, just barely right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's only really well, I guess you would see it from coming the other direction as well, from
Yeah.
across the street, but it's gonna be a small sign, 8 square feet. So could we do a motion where we approve the wall sign and don't approve the vehicle oriented sign?
Yes, you can.
And if you don't like the design, it can also be continued for redesign if you wish for them to bring the sign into conformance or closer to the guidelines.
The whole, the travel lodge sign, that would,
No,
No.
no, the
the
wall.
freestanding
oh, the
sign.
wall,
Wait,
The vehicle oriented sign, I think
Well-
Matthew's saying you can further reduce
the
that
size-
sign.
yeah, well,
As he stated, their existing sign is exceeding the amount of square footage allowed. So, but yes, to answer your original question, you can approve just the wall sign and not the freestanding sign.
At this point, it's basically open. We can suggest many things. We could suggest.
Right.
sign hanging off of there that's wooden. If that
Yeah.
would give approval or,
Can I ask a question? ARC history. Do we give precedence to signs that already and sign poles that already are historically there for a while? Because that's kind of, it sounds like what we're being asked to do is we have these poles and staff is recommending approval because the Travelodge sign is already big and the pole width is already there. You know, if we make this decision, we'll probably want to be consistent, you know, for future.
There's no binding precedent that would be set.
Sure.
As Matthew stated earlier, this is kind of a unique situation. It's within the boundaries of the North Fremont specific plan, which has specific language dealing with the elimination of this type of sign. This site, however, is a VAF property and not subject to that. Kind of going back to committee member Ostrovar's comments earlier, it's valid to look at the overall vision of the area, which that's what the North Fremont specific plan was doing. So whether or not a property is specifically held to those standards and requirements, that is a valid concern and something to take into consideration.
I will say there is a portion of the North Fremont specific plan that talks about historic signs such as Monterey Lanes that associate with the bowling alley. But there has not been a historic report associated with this project site to indicate historic significance.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't mean historic significance, like designation, but historically, just like in the past, but I understand.
quick further question then. So this restaurant is not owned or associated with the hotel?
Correct. The property owner owns it, but they're essentially a tenant.
So they're sort
Mhm.
of borrowing the sign poles.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess if we were to say, make them change the entire signage, I'm guessing the hotel would tell them, then never mind, you can't borrow our sign.
I'm sure there would be a few conversations.
Yeah. Cause yeah, that would be another avenue. It's just like, okay, well, fine, make it compliant with the future vision. But that seems unlikely. And so it does seem more like our decision is either really reduce the sign a lot if we're okay with it being there a little bit, or just say, never mind, it's not worth it. We think you have plenty of signage. There's already enough accommodation in that regard.
I agree with you on that. I would be hesitant to letting them add signage to something that doesn't comply, because that's just like saying, yeah, it's okay, we're just going to keep tacking signs onto these poles, and I think that sends the wrong message. So I would probably move to approve the wall sign and not approve the vehicle oriented sign personally. And I can make a motion, and if it gets seconded and we can vote on it, or we can, see how it goes, or we can go back to the drawing board and keep talking about it.
I just one quick follow-up question. I probably just forgot. It's been a little while since we were shown the presentation. The wall sign is not compliant also?
The wall sign, the only portion that is potentially inconsistent is it being internally illuminated. Internally illuminated signage needs to go before ARC here. There is a certain type of internally illuminated sign for the North Fremont specific plan that they do not like, which is the full box internally illuminated sign that's just a sheet in the front. In this particular case, since it has pushed through letters that have been previously approved through ARC,
Yeah, just that portion. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Matt, can you put up, you were scrolling through the North Fremont plan, there was, you had that example of the sign that is to be discouraged?
Yes. Yes, this thoroughfare, as you guys probably know, was historically the main thoroughfare through the area. So there were a number of freeway
type higher speed signs that were there. Since then, things have changed. We have a highway. We also now have a bike lane through the middle that obscures some of the lower vehicle oriented signage, but regardless.
Okay. So I move to approve 2030 North Fremont sign permit application SI 230128 for one wall sign with internal illumination and not to approve the one vehicle oriented freestanding sign.
I second.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that carries. Thank you, Matthew. We're going to move on to item number 5, 2301 North Fremont Street, sign permit application SI 22-0204.
I will share my screen.
And before Matthew jumps into the next item, I just want to remind our audience that decisions of the ARC are appealable within 10 days. Applications for appeal can be submitted to the planning division.
Thank you for that, Levi.
Sure. The next item is associated with 2301 North Fremont, and it is for sign permit application SI 230204 for vehicle-oriented signage. The recommendation from city staff is that the ARC adopt a resolution to deny the sign permit application. The site is also located along North Fremont Street. The general plan designation is commercial, and the zoning in this case is PCNF, which means that it is subject to the North Fremont specific plan and its policies. I do have a correction to make during this presentation. The plans that were included in the packet are outdated. There is a revised version of the plans that were submitted. I will say it does not change staff's recommendation. This version also included LED price numbers. The proposal from the applicant is for an 8-foot tall, 5-foot wide, approximately 40 square foot vehicle oriented sign in the same location as an existing pole sign. This sign has LED price numbers and would be updated based on whatever values they would like to input. The findings required for approval are that the proposal needs to achieve the purposes and objectives of the sign ordinance, be consistent with the guidelines, or ARC determines that the proposal better achieves those purposes and objectives, and the proposal must be found to be consistent with the general plan. City Code under section 31-3.d prohibited signs includes electronic message signs, and that therein excludes traffic control signs. And the definition for electronic sign is rather wide. Any sign that conveys any message through the use of electronic display, light emitting diodes, LCDs, televisions, or computer screens or other electronic medium, including but not limited to open product listing or similar signs in windows. This does not include neon signs, interestingly. There are some nearby signs that are internally illuminated. You'll notice that it's the full box that's illuminated, and the signs are replaced manually. And there are a few of these along North Fremont Street. And after taking a look in the file, each of these have had various approvals throughout the years or one replacement of their sign face and so on. And I will also note that a number of these photos were provided by the applicant, who will likely speak to these as well. There's also 2407 North Fremont. Each of these have the designation of PCNF, and they each have the internally illuminated signage with the numbers. There's one near the end of the road across from the Safeway, and it is technically outside of the city boundary. And this has the type of illuminated numbers display that fall under the electronic sign. ARC options, there is either to deny the sign permit application or continue for redesign. Continuing for redesign could include updating to that type of face that has been approved within the city. Based on the definition and code that we have, we could not find a way to approve the proposed signage. And with that, staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolution to deny the sign permit application. I believe that the applicant is on the line as well, but if you have any questions for staff, we are here.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions for Matthew?
Yeah, can you remind me just the difference between, I guess, denial and, I guess, redesign? Aren't you, I guess, are we expecting them to come back? Is there some kind of penalty for denial versus redesign?
In the case of this project, it may be a better question for the applicant. If you deny the project, the project as proposed could not move forward, and they could apply for a different permit in the future, or they could appeal the decision up. If you continue for redesign, they have an opportunity to still update their sign without starting a new permit cycle, essentially.
Yeah, I guess it would, in that case, we would be signaling that it's close. Bring it closer, but okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think as Matthew was kind of getting at, a difference is kind of fees. So when he says it could be a good question for the applicant, if the applicant's open to a redesign of a sign type that is not strictly prohibited by the sign code, that's something that this committee could give them the opportunity to do without having to go through a new application, pay a new application fee. In the instance the applicant's not open to that, then there's no real point in continuing an item if the applicant's not interested in redesign. And that's when a denial would probably be more appropriate.
Thank you.
Matthew, we've approved these LED signs for gas stations. See, we've approved these LED illuminated price signs for gas stations in downtown Monterey, I think on Munris and Fremont. As the ARC, a couple at least, I know. Is that different than the North Fremont area?
I am not aware of those approvals.
That was, I know we've done it since I've been on the committee.
I'm aware of one that we got hand slapped for and felt a bit like an accident because we were just told that it was already, the sign is like this already. And so I think we thought that we were basically like, why is it coming in front of us? I mean, that's just my memory of one.
Well, I know that there's one at the corner of, it's across from the Casa Munris, by the Stevenson Hotel. I'm not sure what gas station it is, but that one I know was one of the first ones that came to us, and so it'd be the corner of, right. It's
So the Chevron?
Chevron, I guess. Yeah. That one right there. Pretty sure that was it.
I thought there was one where there were signs above the tank that might have
No,
been.
guess not. How
Call that?
well, I thought it was that one, but
Above the
it could be
tank,
that one
not
across the street.
price sign.
The one across the street has a smaller
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
freestanding
I
sign.
don't know how old
not
these
LED.
photos are. No, those are okay.
Staff wasn't aware of any other LED price signs that we have in the city.
I think it's the Chevron near the McDonald's down by like El Estero.
Okay,
Was the one that
okay, yeah, I
I remember
just,
regretting that one, but
I just remember like driving around and going, oh, we approved that. And I was like, I've seen them and I know that, I thought that that was kind of the way we were going because it's easier for the companies to just key it into a computer instead of having somebody go out and actually, physically put letters on
the
it.
weather's so terrible here. Why should we?
Um,
People go outside and
And then it's also, aesthetically, I think, having, I don't want to get into, I don't want to get into a conversation about your sign guidelines. So, you guys want us to deny it. And that means that basically it's going to stay the way it is unless they come back with a different design that fits your guidelines.
Yes, we were recommending denial of the current proposed design. I think, and again, I would defer to the applicant on whether or not this is a possibility, but it would be my assumption if they're looking to update the sign face, and they were unable to do so using the LED signage, they would likely keep the internal illuminated sign design.
Okay.
And then replace the face with a new updated sign face. But to speak to your earlier point, you're kind of going down the same path that staff goes down. We don't necessarily aesthetically feel like there's a strong difference or one way or the other. It's just simply based on the definition that Matthew read earlier. It's a prohibited sign type and therefore staff's unable to make the findings for approval. But it is a conversation worth having potentially in the future of amendments to the North Fremont specific plan or even the sign guidelines to further contemplate LED signage for the purposes of this. So that would be a conversation the ARC would be a part of. And it's something that staff's talking about.
Great.
I don't know if Matt can answer this or Levi, or if it can even be answered. What is the reasoning behind the prohibition of LED lighting? Is it too bright? Is it out of character of the area?
Sure. So, and Matthew, you can maybe throw the definition back up there for electronic messaging signs. So I think at the time that this was labeled as a prohibited sign type, it's as Matthew said, a pretty broad definition that captures, it's electronic messaging. I think when most people visualize what that is, it's these larger, very bright, somewhat obnoxious LED signs that change messages or have tickers or, pretty intrusive and really have strong impact on your dark skies and things of that nature. When you cast a definition this widely, though, you're bound to catch some collateral damage, and I think that's what we have right here.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's just stick to questions and then maybe hear the applicant. So any other questions for Matthew before we start commenting on? So would the applicant like to make a comment or a presentation?
The applicant is online and there's an applicant named Cody with their hands raised. Okay, I can go ahead and allow Cody to speak.
Can you hear us?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for listening. I wanted to say to the note of the EMC boards, most of the EMC signs that we've displayed all over the state of California display words and messages and do have bright popping colors. But to the sign guidelines, we made sure to work with the manufacturer on reducing the overall height, creating that base to make sure that it conforms, and also working with the LED manufacturers according to what you guys would allow us to have as far as lumen count. We're well within, what your guys' rules state. And I just wish that we could have come to a little bit closer of an agreement for an allowance for something like this, since we're putting a real valiant effort in to make sure that you don't have light pollution that it isn't too bright and distracting, that we do reduce the overall height for visibility with traffic. Just some of those factors. I mean, I get it if it's an overwhelming no, I understand, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there that it wouldn't be considered an electronic message board for us, but I know everybody has their own definitions. And like I said, we tried our hardest working with different manufacturers because in the fuel industry, this is where they're going. They're going LED. And if it's not now, it will be soon in the future. Everybody's converting over to it. It's more efficient. It does look nicer. But just those are, and we did create that solid base as requested. So those are just a few points that I had to say. I appreciate you guys listening.
Thank you. Okay, we can open up for comments now. Yeah, this is something that I just can't wait to like.
I'm sorry, just
Go
real
ahead.
quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Can we check for public comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just remind the public how to
Thank you.
join. Once again, to join the meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-914-9563. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. There are no hands raised online.
Okay, so we're going to close public comments and open it up for committee comments. Yeah, I think this is something that we need to address internally, city level with, I remember I just got back from New York and those, scrolling ticker tape, red LED obnoxious signs, hot bagels, hot fresh coffee, that we definitely do not want that, in downtown Monterey, but just a static sign that has a white LED, that just has a simple, gas price that is within the lumens and on all that stuff. I think it looks more modern than the entire box being lit by internal fluorescent tubes. Personally, I think it looks more modern and more sophisticated than the older style. And this also reminds me of what we went through with was it Carl's Jr. or Arby's, where they had, an internally lit fluorescent menu sign that was really bright and really, old fashioned looking. And we wouldn't let them update it with, a plasma or a LCD screen because of the sign guidelines. So it's something that we need to work on, as a city staff and have hopefully some input from ARC on. It looks like to me like they've done a good job on this. They've solidified the base. They're within their square feet, I think. Is that correct? So the only real drawback is that the numbers are, are LED, light emitting diodes. They're not LCD. So, yeah, I mean, I'd really like to. I mean, it seems like they did everything they should have done, and we need to get with the times as a city and say, this is new technology. Like, we didn't used to have halo lighting. We didn't used to have push through letters. It's like it's changing every 6 months now with the new, with LED technology. So I'd like to stay as current with that stuff as possible and not penalize somebody because 15 years ago, we saw those little signs you could plug in and just make any message go by, and nobody wants to see that. But we shouldn't penalize somebody that's just trying to do the right thing and modernize their sign and improve the look of their business. So that's my comment.
While I agree with the idea that it needs further study, that the city staff, hopefully with ARC comments, would have a conversation about this and get to something that we feel addresses those comments. Just LEDs are a little unpredictable in the sense that it's pretty easy to ramp them up or down. As far as I don't know how you would regulate their, we've heard this a few times that, oh, we've reduced, the brightness and all this. And you're like, but we can't, it's really hard to control that because that's
Enforcement.
usually how LEDs are, enforcement, because they're usually sold as very flexible. You can change the colors, you can change, so it's really, that enforcement is difficult. So I agree with that, but that seems like that's a bigger conversation of how to make sure whenever we're getting something to be at a certain light level, color, et cetera, that it stays that way. So that I do understand that as sort of a challenge to get to regulation on that. But because just experientially, driving past places, you see all these little dots. It does catch your eye a little more. They can be much brighter. And those signs, yes, they're kind of this general glow, but there's something that feels less intrusive typically, I think, with those. But I again, totally understand it. Like I get this tension and conflict. One quick clarification. I was just looking at the packet again. They changed it quite significantly. You hardly see their logo or sign. Even frankly, it's really just the numbers that seem to be present.
Yeah, it looks like they removed the large
Yeah.
7-Eleven logo and instead put just the banner there.
I mean, that to
So-
me is a
And
big,
I also understand the applicant. I mean, they're saying they really tried to do this. They're trying to kind of update this. They've reduced a number of the visibility questions on it.
the poles are gone,
Holes are gone.
fast and fresh is gone.
Matt, what is is there a difference in the square footage from the existing sign to the proposed
The revised one is a reduction.
reduction? Okay. Is there a difference in I don't know if it's lumens or the brightness of the LED versus the older style of sign? I think it was Payam that said, the older signs seem a little bit more, for lack of a better word, muted in appearance, I guess, in terms of, there's other colors. They just seem a little bit more muted than driving and seeing white numbers on a black background. So I just don't know if there's a difference in the lumens or the brightness of the old versus the new.
Between the two, I'm not really sure. When it comes to Pam's point about the fact that it is so easy to increase it, we've had a couple code enforcement cases since we primarily operate on a complaint basis. If lights are too bright, we usually hear about it. And we send somebody out there to do it, to bring it back into conformance with what our guidelines are supposed to say. That said, it doesn't get everything. But in terms of the comparison, I'm really not sure.
Well-
The sign guidelines do prescribe lumen
Yeah.
limitations though.
Yeah.
So-
And so that's an enforcement thing. I guess you'd have to go out with a light meter and take a reading and, tell them to turn it down. And like you said, they could just turn it up the next day. I don't know how these things work. I'm not a sign maker, but
And there's
Yeah.
also a lighting color regulation
right.
between 2700 and 3500 Kelvin.
A warm light instead of cool
I
light.
do know, and I do know about Kelvin because I'm a photographer, but
Yeah.
as far as like the sign that you showed at the car wash on Canyon Del Rey, those are red LEDs. I think those are kind of a little more intrusive. These look like they're white, I think. Yeah, that to me, just, I guess the green is diesel maybe. I'm not crazy about that, but I think this, if these numbers were white, and the right color temperature and all that, I think this sign, if you can go to the side by side again, Matthew, I think this is a huge improvement over the existing sign. It's shorter, it's less square feet, it's more modern. I think it's less touristy, like strip mall-y looking, not to, ruffle any feathers, but I think it's a pretty obvious improvement in my mind, visually. And I think that's what I understand is our job is to make Monterey just pretty and not obnoxious looking. So I think It's unfortunate that our sign guidelines are either outdated or just, we need to update them so that something like this, we can choose the right decision, which I think is the one on the right. And it seems like our hands are a little bit tied. Now, what if we made a motion to go against your recommendations and we went ahead and approved it? Would that be something we could do as a committee?
So that would be challenging. In order for that to happen, the committee would have to make findings that, and Matthew can show the required findings for approval. One of those findings is specifically that the proposal is consistent with the general plan. And so that's going to refer you to the zoning ordinance and the sign guidelines. And this is strictly listed as a prohibited sign type. Staff was in the exact same situation. So it's just the inability to make that finding makes that very hard.
So it sounds like our hands are tied on that too.
I also tried to say it was an electronic message sign versus just an electronic sign. And that there might be a distinction there, and that's didn't hold water.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say I support the prohibition of electronic messaging in general until I can see a design that I feel is consistent with the character of Monterey, and I don't see those. I'm not seeing that here personally. So I support staff recommendation to deny at this point.
To further that, if we were to be able to find the findings of approval, we would be setting a precedent as well, correct?
Sure. I'm just saying, speaking from
Yeah.
the panel, like
And
Patrick just tried to bring up.
living in that area and driving that area quite frequently, it would kind of change the character. It is kind of kitschy. It's kind of, I guess it goes back to when those hotels were primarily serving the fairgrounds and the different events that were being held there. I'm not adamantly opposed to LED signs, and I would assume that eventually there's going to be a time when the other kind of signs that are in that area are not going to be able to be replaced because the tech has just moved on. But I personally feel it's a little out of character for that area. And then we would be setting precedent to have all those gas stations along that strip potentially coming in, and then it's going to be a bunch of white LED signs, which are, I think, brighter than what's proposed. Or it just stands out more, maybe because it's against a total black background. I'm not entirely sure, but I am concerned about the precedent being set.
Yeah, and I think that speaks, and just hearing the different opinions on this committee on this particular sign, I think speaks to the larger conversation that needs to be had about whether or not we want to revise the sign guidelines to allow this type of signage. So I think that as I'm hearing it today, sounds like a much larger conversation than just this site.
Most definitely. Any other comments for staff? Okay, I'd like to move to deny 2301 North Fremont Street sign permit application SI 22-0204 for one replacement internally illuminated vehicle oriented freestanding sign.
A second.
Second. All those in favor of denying? Aye.
Aye.
So that carries unanimously. The applicant has, or anybody, I guess, has a 10 days to appeal this to the Planning Commission. Thank you. Okay. Any other committee? Well, I think this is something we should talk about. I'm going to go around. I don't know if I'm going to do, I might do it tonight because I'm just like, what the hell? I know we approved some LED signs at a gas station somewhere, and I'll just drive around until I find them. Yeah, we need to address this because like that sign for Carl's Jr., they should have you know, a slick computerized sign that they can, you know, type in and change the specials, and that thing that's there is like 40-year-old technology, you
And I
know?
want to say that sign, didn't the proposed sign reduce the brightness?
Yeah.
Again, that's what they were saying, but it's really
But
hard.
then
It's,
again-
it's very hard to know that. So to me, to be comfortable approving something like that, I want to know that the city has gone through.
Yeah.
Everything that shows that we can control that, we can regulate that. There are other types. There's tons of different types of signs and lighting too, that don't have to be these little points that are.
Right. Well, that was,
Little
that
intrusive.
that was like a flat screen TV, basically, the Carl's
That's my
Jr.
memory as
Yeah.
well, but, and so it's just worth, it's worth a discussion. Obviously, technology's advanced since this was last done. It should be done fairly soon. I think this has happened at least.
Yeah.
Quite a few times.
Yeah.
In the last 5 or 6 months. Alone, so
Levi, how old is this sign? Ordinance guideline?
The guidelines?
Yeah.
They're around 2012 was
Oh,
the most
geez.
updated one.
So over 10 years.
So what's the next step? Is it something that the planning commission does?
So staff would undertake, they would consider revisions to bring forward for the sign guidelines. And then obviously if any specific plan amendments that would be necessary as well. It would be studied by staff. Typically in those instances, we look at what other cities have done, and what the concerns are and what the pain points have been in other cities. And then we would put together a draft of revisions that we would bring before this committee, get a recommendation. We would then take that to planning commission, and then if ultimately to council as the sign guidelines are adopted as a part of the city code.
So do we have to formally request that of you?
You can do that.
Okay. And in writing, or can I?
You can do it right now.
Okay, I formally request that we looked at the sign guidelines. I think it's in dire need of an update. So I know you guys are.
It's
Right then,
something
but-
we're talking about as
Okay.
Pyle mentioned, it's coming up more and more often, and,
Yeah.
and it's something that it would be nice to have even if the ultimate decision is to not change the sign guidelines, it'd be nice to have a fresher decision on that.
Sure, and I think as Pam was mentioning, if we can get it dialed in as much as possible, so there's a lot less leeway, like message signs. What is that? That was for a specific type of message sign. I'm assuming like those scrolling little signs that people had,
Right.
15 years ago. But now that's a shotgun approach to everything that's out there now with LEDs. So
Yeah, definitely. And it will be, and just as you know, with signage, it's kind of a sticky topic. Everyone will have to be very careful on how we go to, if we want to move forward to allow this type of signage in certain instances, and how that's applied in a regulatory sense that would not be construed as content regulation. So just something to keep in mind. Staff's going to be mindful of that as we evaluate that, but it's something you'll probably be hearing a lot from us as we talk about it moving forward.
I mean, it could be as simple as just saying you can have numbers but not letters, right?
That's pretty close to content regulation. I would get a legal opinion on it
Okay.
before we brought anything before the committee.
that sign had letters on it. Too,
Yeah.
of course, but.
There's a
Well, yeah, but
viewable
the
inside,
LEDs
leaded.
were just prices, I think.
I think you're right,
The
actually.
7-Eleven was a logo.
Yeah.
And then that was
And then
internally
that lighting
illuminated or
and
something,
stuff
but
was also not
Yeah.
LED, but.
so there could be like a segment that's just prices
Yeah.
for gas stations. It could be that specific. And yes, they can be this kind of LED or
So-
this kind of LCD.
So again, limiting it to a specific business type is wading into a area of legal concern, so that you kind of see where this gets really, and that's staff's task, is to see if there's a way to balance the complexity that this would require to apply these rules, that that is balanced enough to make it worth its while to make the change.
I mean, maybe a more the definition seems very broad. So the LED, maybe that needs to be buttoned down and be a little bit more specific without being content specific
Right.
or regulatory.
So thank you for speaking to that. I appreciate also the pain points part, like just making sure to check other cities and things like that. What were the pieces that are difficult? I think just a overall technology presentation of these things too. What are some of the different types?
Like I'd never heard push through letters until today. I mean, I know what they are. They're like 3-dimensional letters that push through,
Right.
but
And staff can tell you, we deal with sign applicants a lot, and we learn a lot from them every time we speak
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the professionals in this. And
like Halo lit and all that stuff.
there's a lot of technical jargon that we learn.
Any informational or staff reports today?
Yeah, just I mean, it was included in the packet, but I'll just run through it. The biggest one of the bigger things happening at Planning Commission was the adoption of the Cannabis Business Overlay District. That'll be moving forward to council. It was approved by Planning Commission or recommended for approval as presented. So that's moving forward to City Council on November 7th. Yes, next Tuesday. And then also at Planning Commission, they heard the appeal of the 95 Prescott or the Tipsy Putt location sign application that this committee heard at their previous meeting. That item was continued for redesign. So
What-
no decision was made on that.
What particular part were they appealing? Just out of curiosity.
They appealed the just overall decision, but then what they were looking for, went forward with planning commission with their original proposal. Planning commission continued the item for redesign, but with a specific square footage limitation of what would be allowed under the sign guidelines based on their lineal frontage. So essentially it was continued for redesign, but to be within the 265 square feet that would be allowed. So more or less, Planning Commission said you can have 265 square feet of signage. We'll let you decide, applicant, how that's applied to the building.
265 square foot.
That's correct.
So they could do that wrap around the top of the building, or is that too big?
I think just one of those was 135 square feet. So they could potentially do both of those and have no other
No other
signage.
signage.
Or they could do just one. So that's
I saw that was a vinyl.
Yep.
That's
thing.
correct. We did
Yeah.
confirm that in between the two hearings, and we made the planning commission aware of
So
that.
that'll be easy to remove if they choose to remove it.
That's
And
correct.
that was the one, there was only one change that they made between here and planning commission, and it was including the brickwork type of thing that's printed on the other sign into their
Okay.
other
Yeah,
lettering.
we'll be reporting whenever a decision is made on that by planning commission, but that's all we have.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? We will adjourn.